And then just bring these little flecks down into the nose. They're very short hairs on the nose itself, so again, we don't need to do too much, just let it fade out into the nose itself, and then we can pop a few longer ones around the cheeks, just coming into the neck. Notice how these strokes are getting a little bit longer now. Again, following the direction of the fur growth, varying the angles here and there ever so slightly, and even longer when it come out to the side of the face just here. And finally, with the dark grey hard pastel, before we finish, we'll just use the side just to create a little bit of shadow underneath the chin, going down into the neck. You notice I'm dragging the pastel down on the side there. That's all we need. Nice soft shadow. And don't forget just to stroke him before we finish off this texture layer. Okay, so now we've finished with the fur texture, we'll go on to probably the most important part of any portrait, which is the eyes. And to begin this process, I'm using a kind of sanguine hard pastel just to get a base coat in the eyes. It's important to build the eyes up gradually. So first of all, we'll just give ourselves a little base colour with the sanguine hard pastel. Well, automatically that gives us some nice glowing red eyes, doesn't it? But wolves don't have red eyes. So the next thing we need to do, we'll take a yellow pastel and then we'll just soften that off a little bit. The way we do this is a kind of cartwheel effect. All the spokes going into the centre of the eye or the pupil, and then we can take our finger and just blur the two together, and that gives us a nice sort of golden amber look. Okay, the next thing we need to consider when we're painting eyes is the light source. And as you can see from this reference photo, that the light is actually coming from the top right. What happens in the bottom left-hand corner of the eye, this is highlighted by the sun coming in the opposite direction. This is the iris, the colour part of the eye, being highlighted in that corner. Okay, the next thing to do before we deal with any kind of reflection is we'll just get the pupils re-established and the outline of the eyes. Just dab with the hard black pastel, softly dab the pupil in. Try to avoid doing a hard circle. This is very cartoony, usually only seen on Walt Disney type of cartoons. And then again, before we establish the highlight, we'll just go around the edge of the eye, rather more carefully this time, because this is our finished product. So reshaping, checking your photograph, getting the eye shape as perfect as you can on the corners of the eyes. So this is what gives Torak that very special wolf look. Okay, and now we can deal with the highlight. The highlight is probably the most important part of the eyes. And again, you need to remind yourself of where the light source is coming from. So our light source is coming from the top right, so therefore the reflection of the sun should be in the top right of the eye as well. Again, you only need to dab a little bit of this white on very, very carefully. Not too much in this eye because this eye is more in shade. This eye is catching more light, so we can put a little bit more reflection on there. Try to avoid doing a hard spot in the centre of the pupil because it just won't work. And while we've got the white, we can just give a little bit of reflection on the wet part of the lower lid. And that's the eyes. The next area we'll deal with is the nose and the muzzle and mouth area. So, back with our black pastel. Now remember at the beginning we put a soft grey undercoat into this nose, and that's because we didn't want a cartoony black shiny nose. So taking our black pastel, we'll just re-establish the outline of our sketched nose, and notice that the nose comes in two parts, the highlighted part on the top and the bit in shadow where the nostrils are underneath. So once we've established our outline again, go in with the black pastel and shade in the lower part where the nostrils are, reasonably heavily, not too heavily, something like that, and then softly give yourself a dividing line, not a hard line, and then finally we'll give ourselves a much softer glaze almost of pastel for the top part, and again rub it in with your finger. If it's not dark enough, do it again. It's better to do this kind of glazing very, very lightly, adding as you need to, rather than going in too heavily and trying to take it off again. Now, whilst we've got the black pastel in our hand, we'll do the lower lip, which we already established in the initial drawing. So just redefine that. Give ourselves a few little whiskers either side, which looks like a kind of little moustache, and soften that off with your fingers as well. And then we'll just get the chin roughly, loosely sketched in and shape the lower part of the muzzle. Just a few little hairs at the top of the nose to bring it all together. And that's it for the black.